Captain Idris Janek was the captain of the US CSS Prometheus during the ship's maiden voyage to the moon known as LV-223, and served his role well, not only in his professional obligations, but also in his obligations to his homeworld and his species, when he gave himself in the ultimate sacrifice in order to protect and guard everything he cared for. Idris Janek was a strong-willed and charismatic man who genuinely cared about his crew and subordinates. He had a great passion for his job as the ship captain and forged him into a quite honourable man, which we saw in the film Prometheus. Janek most likely had extensive military experience, just simply gleamed from the fact that the way he carries him and conducts himself. Despite this though, he is not exactly battle-hardened in any way and appears to act with more fluidity and flexibility instead of a stern stance. This seems to indicate that he may have once been a part of a military force like the Colonial Marines, however eventually left to work in a better fit for him in the form of ship's captain. Idris Janek was born on the year 2051 on Earth, presumably somewhere in the US. Janek's early life is somewhat of a mystery to us in the current Alien universe. Very little is known about his childhood and upbringing and adulthood. Despite this though, as I said before, I think that he was at one point some part of the military, which gave him perspective on his life and allowed him to realise his passion for captaining a vessel. Now, he may have been the captain of many ships prior to the Prometheus, however, again, there is really no other way for us to tell explicitly. Nevertheless, eventually, Janek enters into employment under a contract with Weyland Corporation, and is eventually put on the payroll of the Prometheus expedition, and selected to be the captain for the US CSS Prometheus. He took part in many various mandatory training and rigorous training exercises for the members of the Prometheus expedition, and was featured within the transmission that Weyland Industries beamed to LV-223. Idris Janek eventually entered into hypersleep aboard the US CSS Prometheus, along with the rest of his crew and his superior in the form of Meredith Vickers, lead company executive on the project and overseer of the expedition, ensuring that mission goals and, more importantly, Weyland Industries' agenda was upheld. Janek, along with his crew, eventually arrived at the moon, and briefly recovering from the sickening effects of a long hypersleep, now years after their departure from Earth in 2091, now in 2093, the crew rapidly prepare themselves to be debriefed and to take part in the mission. Crew members Holloway and Shaw eventually debriefed their fellow crew members on their expedition, as it had been deemed confidential information due to the massive implications of what they were trying to achieve and discover. After this, Janek prepared for the descent to the moon's surface, and they emerged on the surface with the crew and begun to prepare themselves for the hostile environment of LV-223, and more so the temples they had noticed while landing. Janek remained with the other bridge officers in the ship whilst the away team went to investigate. Despite this, he was kept constantly informed and updated of the crew's ventures through an array of video and audio display units. After observing the crew encounter a large form of holographic visual recordings, and having it lead to them to a room of large fossilised bodies, Janek witnesses Shaw obtaining the samples of a supposed engineer, the creators of humanity. Now, up until this point, Janek hadn't thought much of the whole idea of the mission, and took little interest in the faith of Shaw and Holloway's belief. However, after what he saw in the temple, his attitude began to change, and he could now see that these theorists were right all along. Soon after, Janek is informed by the ship's sensors that a large storm would soon arrive in the vicinity of the ship and the temple, making it near impossible for the crew to return to the Prometheus. He informs the crew and they eventually head back. After a short dilemma with Shaw being almost whisked away by the storm after trying to save the engineer head she had obtained by Holloway and the android of the ship named David, Janek does a head count, and it turns out that two of the crew Milburn and Fifield were left trapped in the temples. Janek basically explains to them that they will have to wait until the storm subsides in the following morning, and that they are best to prepare themselves to spend the night. After sitting back to monitor Milburn and Fifield, eventually Meredith Vickers enters the bridge and doesn't notice Janek sitting in the room. Janek, in an act of mischief, takes the opportunity to scare her with an accordion that he had in his possession at the time. After a brief conversation, older Janek attempts to play his cards right, so to speak, trying a few different ways to get Vickers to have sex with him, and after a final comment about her possibly being a robot, that seems to do it for some reason. Janek scores, and it makes him over the moon with his accomplishment, singing that if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with.
Love the one you're with.
Later the next day, the storm has subsided. Janek ventures to the temples with the rest of the crew to find Fifield and Milburn, who are now not responding to communication hails, as well as their video feeds being switched off. But this doesn't seem to last long, as Holloway becomes increasingly sickened, and they find one of the crew in the headroom. It's Milburn, and he turns out to be dead. They hightail it back to the Prometheus, however Holloway is refused entry, as he is beginning a round of horrific mutations. As they try and get Holloway aboard, Vickers makes herself present, and with a flamethrower in hand, she denies Holloway's entry onto the ship, due to the fear of whatever sickness he had spreading amongst the crew. Janek pleaded along with Shaw for him to be put into quarantine. Janek was already stressed out enough from finding the dead Milburn, and now he would have to feel the loss of Holloway as he sacrificed himself to Vickers in a cleansing fire in order to stop her from kicking Shaw out with him. He is eventually put down by Vickers, and Janek jumps onto Shaw, embracing her, stopping her from climbing to Holloway and burning along with her love. Eventually she passes out from the sheer stress of the situation, and Janek and the crew help to get her aboard and into quarantine. Janek, after passing quarantine procedures, goes to collect his thoughts. However, shortly after, a new chaos unfolds, as the crew member Fifield's body turns up outside the cargo bay door of the Prometheus. Soon though, it is revealed that the body was not in fact dead, and had mutated into a horrifically violent and brutal creature that began to kill the crew members one after one, forcing its way into the cargo bay. Soon after Janek takes some of the crew, they arm themselves with high energy bolt pistols and flamethrowers in order to take down the beast that Fifield had become. Eventually, after many had been left dead, the beast is killed, but not before being run over by a 2-ton transporter, shot multiple times, and being extensively burnt. Eventually, after all this madness, when Janek thought he had seen it all, it was revealed that Sir Peter Wayland was not only alive, but secretly aboard the ship the whole time, and the mission had all been for him to meet his makers. Janek, at this point, consoled all the chaos with the fact that he was there to do just one job, to keep people safe and fly the ship. A point that he brings up with Shaw after he meets with her just before they head out with Wayland and the remaining crew in order to speak with an engineer that had been secretly in stasis in the temple for thousands of years. While Shaw wanted to talk to them, Janek wanted no partner. They go their separate ways, however before they do, they make a pact with each other that no matter what happens, they cannot allow this dangerous pathogen that infected Holloway, Milburn and Fifield to get back to Earth. Once in the stasis room along with Wayland, David and a few other crew members including Shaw are watched by Janek and his bridge crew as well as Vickers as they awaken and revive the slumbering engineer. The colossal being arises, feet above everyone else in the room, gazing out, observing its new surroundings, and as Shaw attempts to question the engineer about why they wish to now destroy humanity, she is quickly silenced by one of the security officers ordered by Wayland, who had had enough of her comments. The engineer, fed up with this situation, decapitates David and uses the head to fracture Wayland's skull, effectively killing him. It goes on to kill many of the other crew members, as Shaw quickly picks herself up from her knees and begins to bolt out of the temple. Janek and the rest watch on helplessly to stop the onslaught, as Vickers commands him to prepare to take off and return to Earth, as their mission was over. The surface of the ship began to shift and move just in front of the Prometheus, as it is revealed that it is really a roof opening to a massive underground chamber, housing an engineer spacecraft. As the ship rises and begins to prepare to head to Earth to finish what the engineers had started 2,000 years ago and wipe out humanity, Shaw pleads with Janek to stop the ship by any means necessary, as if it escapes, they won't have any Earth to go back to. Janek knew what was at stake, but he tells Shaw that they weren't a warship. What could he possibly throw at the engineer's vessel to even make a dent? He had nothing. But after hearing Shaw say that she knew that, and hearing the solemnness of her voice, Janek knew what he had to do. He orders the ion thrusters to be warmed up and ready to be activated on his command. The bridge crew warn him that this will turn the ship into a bullet while in atmosphere, but that's exactly what Janek was counting on. Vickers begins to freak out with her coming mortality about to hit her quite literally on the head. Janek gives her two choices. She can either stay with him and the crew, or she can take a lifeboat equipped for 2 years of survival on the surface. She very immediately opts for the latter and makes her escape. Janek offers his crew the same option, however they are not so cowardly, and choose to stay by Janek's side until the end, telling him that he's not even that great a pilot, and is going to need all the help he can get. Bonded in their resolve, united in their determination to potentially save the entire human race from the engineers, they fire and speed towards the engineer's vessel with such purpose it knocks a god from the heavens. Janek is successful in his attempt with the crew by his side, as he makes the ultimate sacrifice to keep everyone back on Earth and potentially the entire Middle Heavens region of human-controlled space safe from one murderous engineer. Idris Janek was loyal and an honourable man who found comfort in the familiar and the ordinary. He only wanted the safety of those he cared about and the success of the mission laid out before him. Obviously, he was willing to sacrifice everything in order to keep and uphold the safety of his homeworld and everyone that lived there. He was kind, honest, fair, and was never seen to be cruel or callous towards anyone under his command. His crew held him in such high regards that they were willing to lay down their lives under his orders, and even in the case that there was no issue ordered. Before I go, I just wanted to let you guys know about the merch store called ACHERON's Colonial Marketplace. Here you can pick up a variety of ACHERON and alien themed merch from 3 distinct product lines, including shirts, hoodies, mugs, blankets, stickers, bags, and even phone cases. So if you want to support the channel and look good doing it, pick up some ACHERON merch. But what other videos would you guys like to see? If you have any ideas or have any questions you would like answered, please meet me down in the comments. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and go check out Project ACHERON on Twitter and Discord. If you want to support me further, you can become a patron where you can get access to early and behind the scenes content, the monthly and Alien Day giveaways, as well as the patron only engraved set of items. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Until then, this is Project ACHERON, signing off.